Hi, guys. Welcome to Final Draft Big Break Week. I am Lee Jessup, Business of Screenwriting professor, career coach, and also mentor for the Final Draft Big Break Grand Prize winners. Thank you for being with us today. I'm here with Khalid and Heather, our winners of the 2025 Final Draft Big Break competition. And we are recording this at the end of what we have come to lovingly know as Final Draft Winners Week. So we are going to share with everybody what the experience has been like and get to know our two winners. Heather, Khalid, it's great to have you here. Heather, I'd love for you to introduce yourself to our listening audience.
So my name's Heather Farlinger. I'm a writer and producer. I grew up in Vancouver, Canada, and I feel kind of at home here in LA because it's West Coast. And then I went to school in Toronto, and now I reside in Montreal.
Lovely. Khalid, a little bit about you.
Yeah, my name is Khalid Abdul Qadir. I am originally from St. Louis by way of Wichita, Kansas, but I currently live in Kansas City. I am also a writer, director, producer, and I also feel at home here.
So I'm going to do the Hollywood thing that I know you've been drilled on all week as you've been taking meetings, and ask you to tell me a little bit more about yourself, a little bit more of the story of you.
Oh. You want to go first? You want to go
You can go first.
I can go. So after high school, I joined the military, which was a interesting experience. I was a combat medic attached to the Marines, Navy Corpsman. I actually spent time here stationed in Camp Pendleton, California. I lived in Oceanside. Had a great time out there. After the military, I did years of school while I also worked for the U.S. government as a civilian. And my script is based on my life story, which we can get into once we get to that
We
segment.
absolutely will, because it's a fantastic connection to the work that you have. So we'll get to it in just a sec. All right, Heather, I'd love to know a little bit more of your life story.
So I grew up in Vancouver, and I was the kind of kid that loved climbing trees, jumping off of trees, jumping out of trees, living in a tree. I was always in a tree. So I guess I was sort of a little daredevil. It started very, very young. I was riding motorcycles and doing all this crazy stuff. And that thrill-seeking attitude progressed to bungee jumping off of bridges and jumping out of perfectly good airplanes. And I sort of had that thrill-seeker in me. Now I'm more of a reformed thrill-seeker, of course. I went to school in Toronto, and I have a degree in international relations. And I had a great time living there. I was recruited to Montreal to go and work for a tech company there. And I'm still in Montreal now, not jumping off of anything or out of anything.
But writing a lot.
But writing about those kinds of things. And I use my writing to scratch that same itch. So, for example, I write about unsung heroes, real or imagined, and they usually are based on true life stories, because when I find someone who I feel has had some injustice in some way, I feel the need to champion them and make sure that the world knows who they are and what they did. And in this case, my script is also kind of scratching that same itch. And it gives me a way of getting that same thrill, but also expressing a little bit more altruism, I guess. You know, when you get a degree in international relations, you sort of want to be able to create a good effect on the world. And there's different ways of doing that, and you kind of have to do what you can within your own sphere of influence. And right now, I think that TV and film has a very important role in culture. So I take that role pretty seriously, and through the writing, hopefully make a little bit of a difference.
Absolutely. I mean, I find movies and TV to be the one thing across the world that we tend to agree on, the one thing we all come together for. that we can disagree on as well, right? We can love movies or hate movies, but not get into bar fights over them, which is lovely. So in many ways, it's become kind of the modern day church where we all gather
That's so true.
and share in that experience.
That's so true.
Now, it's important to note that Final Draft Big Break received over 12,000 submissions in 2025, and you guys came out the top 2 scripts, the top TV and feature script for this year, which is incredibly exciting. So, Khaled, let's start with you. I'd love to hear a little bit about your pilot that
Yes.
won the TV side of the Final Draft Big Break competition.
Yeah, so as I alluded to earlier, my pilot is based on my life story. The title is Affection of a Tiger. And it is the story of how I went from being labeled a terrorist suspect in connection to 9/11 to becoming a spy for the U.S. government. So, the script follows loosely, my journey in high school when 9/11 first happens. My dad is detained in connection to the attacks. And even though he's found to have no involvement or anything like that, the stigma destroys my family environment. So my brother, for example, was on his way to the NFL. That ended his NFL career. And then subsequently, I joined the military and then, try to prove my family's loyalty and my father's innocence through my real life experiences. So that's the gist of what my script is about.
That's really exciting, and it's such a personal story that I think is so many people would be so intrigued by, and a remarkable story. And having spent the week with you, you tell it so well, and it's informed you in so many ways. What is the long view to the series that you have in mind for this pilot?
Yeah, so, what I would like to do, if I could describe it in this way, some people may have seen like Snowfall, for example. There's the Snowfalls, there's the Powers, there are these Black-led TV shows that do deal with a very real experiences, from the Black American experience. I had a very different experience as a Black American, and the way I see this being is a story that really shows how someone goes from being a regular American kid to actually becoming like a government operative. A lot of folks who work in that industry tend to come from, shattered homes. Not everyone, not to be stereotypical, but a lot of them had some kind of issue or some kind of thing happen to them when they were young, and it like sends them like a lightning bolt in this direction. They get very patriotic. They get very dedicated to their work. And they're no longer concerned with their own well-being and et cetera, et cetera. And those are the types of mentalities that you need to have somebody who can, cross the Uzbek-Afghan border on foot by themselves and things like that. So, where like a Snowfall did that to show the development of a regular kid becoming like a drug kingpin, I would want to do that and show how someone becomes a government operative long-term and from a Black American perspective.
I love that, and it sounds like a story that we want to see and have told.
Mm-hmm.
Can't wait to see what happens with it.
Me too.
Heather, I would love to hear a little bit about your feature that won the feature side of the Final Draft Big Break competition for 2025.
Absolutely. My feature is called Unshakable. It's a true story action thriller based on the weeks leading up to the eruption of Mount St. Helens, which is the largest volcanic eruption in U.S. history. And we don't have a movie about that, if you can believe it or not. And it happened 46 years ago. So our way into that eruption is through the eyes of the first female governor of Washington State, who is up for re-election. This lady, her name is Dixie Lee Ray. She was a real person. She was a nuclear scientist who was recruited by Nixon to head up the Atomic Energy Commission. She was a brilliant scientist. She worked there, I believe, for 3 years. And then she became governor of Washington State for 4 years. And she worked in a pretty, let's just call it a tense male environment where everyone sort of wasn't really happy that she was there. But she became so popular just through her own brilliance and the fact that she was also quite amusing. She came upon the role rather reluctantly, but decided that actually she could make some change. And she was always the smartest person in the room, and she was always 10 steps ahead of everyone else. So in the weeks leading up to the eruption, there were signs, there were physical signs, scientific signs that she did see that were alarming because the mountain had been dormant for about 100 years prior, and there had been many little rumblings, but nothing had ever happened. And so the community there and the politicians there didn't really want to believe that anything would happen. And of course, why would it? For the last 100 years, it hadn't. So she recruited some volcanologists to come in and assess the area. And they took their measurements, and everyone said, it's going to be fine, but we're not really sure because there are some seismic spikes. Meanwhile, her political campaign manager and financier did not want her to evacuate the area or close down the area for obvious economic reasons, but she was getting a little concerned. And within the next couple of weeks, the seismic activity peaked at an all-time high. And then the worst thing happened that could ever have happened, which is it just went silent. So the community said, see, nothing's going to happen. We're fine. And then about a week later, there were increased rumblings, and there was a massive landslide on the north flank of the mountain, the largest landslide also in U.S. history. The mountain erupted on a Sunday morning, May 18th, 1980. And she had managed to evacuate by that time, despite the fight of all of the political environment around her. She had managed to evacuate most of the people. And as a result of her efforts alone, really, only 57 people died. And there could have been tens of thousands. So she saved tens of thousands of lives. And when we talk about that event, Mount St. Helens, we remember the historical event, but nobody remembers her. And so I felt it was my duty to sort of tell her story. And getting back to where I grew up in Vancouver, I have vague memories as a little kid of the ash falling down from the sky and people shoveling the ash off of their cars. And I think I remember the buses stopped running, and it was a really big deal. And we were in Vancouver, Canada, which was quite far from Mount St. Helens. But the ash cloud spread immediately to 3 states, and it unleashed with the force of 1,600 Hiroshima atomic bombs.
Wow.
Yeah. So after that, we could imagine, this could happen again, but not in our lifetime. And now we're starting to see more volcanic activity around the world. So we could use her right now, actually, I think.
We could use a reminder of
reminder,
those stories.
Yes.
Well, and I'm so happy you wrote it. So tell me, what was it like getting the call telling you that you won the Final Draft Big Break competition?
I thought someone was punking me because I think Amy from Final Draft contacted me, and she said, I really need to talk to you about your script. And I thought, uh-oh, am I in trouble? What happened, And she said, no, I really need to speak to you. I said, okay, well, I think the time that she called me, I was sitting in my dentist's office. I said, okay, not right now, but can we do it tomorrow? So when she finally called me, it was early in the morning, and I was so happy to speak with her. And then she briefly kind of fooled me a little bit. She was very sly. And then she said, and by the way, you won the contest. And I said, no, I didn't. And she said, yes, you are the grand prize winner. And I think it's a blur after that. I think I lost my mind. So yeah, it was very, very, very exciting. I can't really put it into words, actually, because as writers, we don't anticipate that kind of, we just don't anticipate that kind of thrill, especially for me. It was first thing in the morning, and I don't think my feet touched the ground for about 3 days after that call.
I can imagine that. And a quick shout out to Amy, who
Yes.
oversees the competition and
Absolutely.
champions the writers, and there couldn't be anybody better
Absolutely.
running this and just being your cheerleader in this. She reads all the finalist scripts and is closely involved in every stage and really shepherds the writers in such a great way. So
Yes, we owe her big time.
Quick
Yes,
shout
we
out.
do.
Well
Thank
deserved.
You, Amy.
For sure.
So Khaled, where were you? What was it like? Tell me.
Yeah, so I was in my living room, and I had the same experience. I thought I was in trouble. It's weird, you know. You just feel like, what did I do? Like, what could I have written that caused a problem here?
Yeah, like trigger warning or something.
Yeah. But no, to be honest, I think that I don't think it has hit me yet. Even
Yeah,
I
same.
think I'm still kind of in the surreal phase because I can tell you, I've never won bingo. Like when I was a little kid, second, third grade, playing bingo, I never won. Stuck with me my whole life. So winning something like this as a writer is incredible. I've been writing now, I told you earlier, going on about 8 years and never having really anything. And then suddenly, to get something like this it's huge. It's huge. It's great and it's also scary, because on one hand, it is sort of a validation of your skill set. But on the other hand, you are kind of thinking like, oh, can I do this again? Is this consistency for me? So those are just things in my mind. But yeah, so I'm still surreal, still figuring it out.
I love that. So you are told you won the final draft, big break, grand prize. And then what do you get? What are the prizes? Tell us everything.
Oh my goodness. The prizes are incredible. We each received $10,000.
So that's no.
We each received an iPad, a laptop, a wonderful course with the New York Film Academy, which we haven't started yet, but it's coming.
Yep. UCLA Extension.
A UCLA extension also coming up
April 1st.
April 1st.
Looking forward to that.
And what else? There's so many things.
The mentoring.
The mentoring. You are one of the prizes.
I
We're
get to be a prize, which how
Yes.
humbling is that? I'm a prize.
I believe we get 5 hours with you.
You do.
And we're very thrilled about that, believe me. So yes, you are the prize in our hearts and in our minds.
Well, I'm sure at this point, these guys were recording this after we've spent days and days together driving around the city in cars. I'm sure they're a little bit like, okay, let's not talk for a little bit.
Right. Well, so wait, it gets better. That's another part of the prize. We get set up with all wonderful kind of meetings with managers, agents, producers, directors. We have been wined and dined. There's a lot of food, breakfast, lunch, and dinner at the best restaurants with the best food and the best company.
Yeah.
And we've had the opportunity to kind of pierce that inner circle because of you and all of your incredible contacts and Final Draft contacts.
Yeah.
And these contacts are
network.
people, that we would not have ever been able to meet on our own from Canada, from Kansas City. And for us, one of the most important things I think that we found some community in was a working writers' breakfast, where we got to meet all of these writers that have been where we are and know how it feels, and they shared their experiences with us, and it was just like a wonderful, wonderful breakfast with them.
The network building, I think, is the most valuable piece.
Yeah, I
because
agree.
as we've heard from multiple people now since we've been here, the writing matters, obviously, but the network does as well. So you have to be able to get out, get to know people, build a community, and that's going to support your writing and your career at the same time. So yeah, meeting those other writers was incredible.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, the industry is a very personal industry at the end of the day. You work with a person, not with script. You work with a writer. And so having that community becomes really important. I'm allowed the privilege of latching on to the Final Draft Big Break people and being involved in some of the planning, which is so much fun. Just for the listeners, we started this year's what we call the Final Draft Big Break Winners Tour with a dinner with Greta Heinemann, who is a working writer who won the competition, I think 7 or 8 years ago, who took a break from her time on Prison Break in the writer's room to come and meet and share stories about selling features and pilots and working on shows. From there, the writers went to the Saturn Awards, which tell us about the Saturn Awards, because that sounded so much fun.
The Saturn Awards, they were incredible. We basically had dinner with Tom Cruise, James Cameron, Guillermo del Toro,
Lawrence Fishburne,
Gina Davis,
William
George
Shatner.
Lucas, William Shatner,
Mark Hamill.
Oh
yeah.
It was a really intimate dinner, just the three of us. No, we were in attendance at the dinner in the audience, and they were being awarded some Lifetime Achievement Awards, and so of course.
Yeah.
It was a big surprise for us. And when they came out, there was a standing ovation. It was so exciting. And also, I have to say, the Lucas Company had provided the original C-3PO, R2-D2, and a few other little robots who were in the hallway waiting to welcome us when we came through the doors. And we have to admit, as science fiction geeks, it was quite the thrill.
Yeah.
It sounds amazing. And Christopher McQuarrie was being honored as well,
McQuarrie
right?
also, of course, not last but not least, certainly.
Yeah. It was great to see the larger community at work.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because obviously, being from the outside looking in, you're usually just looking at it on TV. So you see people get up, you see them talk, the camera moves around, there are a few people sitting down in their chairs, everyone's smiling, this and that. But, I actually got to stand around people near the bar or near the robots taking pictures and, just kind of catch bits and pieces of conversations. And people really, they really care about each other, and they're really interested in each other's success, and they're very congratulatory. And so just to see that personal relationships throughout the room was really good for me.
Little did they know they had a trained spy in their midst.
I was paying attention. I'm definitely paying attention to everything.
I love that. I mean, you told us that you used to write cultural reports in the different countries that you went to, so I'm sure there was a lot to observe here.
Yes, I'm paying attention to the culture for sure.
I love it. So then Monday morning, we followed it up with this working writers breakfast, where community building efforts, you guys got to meet those working writers in features and television. From there, we went to a manager's lunch, where we put together a group of, I think, 6, 7, 8 managers who came together. How was that for you? What were the insights gained?
Yeah, I mean, to hear directly from, the horse's mouth was awesome. Well, to first sit down with writers, which we are, and to hear that perspective, and then to go and sit down with managers and hear like the really, the nitty gritty. There were no sugar coats.
No.
So, but it's good because it's given us direct insight into what we're trying to enter into.
Yeah.
And it sets our expectations, which is a common theme that we've been talking about, and also preparing us for some things that we should look out with ourselves as far as developing our work ethic, what kind of character traits we should try to amplify within ourselves.
What not to do.
What not to do. Yeah.
Just as important.
Just as important.
Yeah. And so the combination of those experiences to meet the writers, meet managers who are actively in the business, they have things on TV, they're selling things actively currently, and then to hear their perspectives, it's just invaluable.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, you guys got a lot of that. That was followed up by a mixer with showrunner Wendy Calhoun and her people at Idle Hour, where you got to meet a million people. Now, I say Idle Hour and it makes it sound like, well, Idle Hour is the name of the place, but it all sounds very forgiving. But the truth of the matter is you were at the Saturn Awards until 1:30 in the morning. You were out at the mixer until late into the night.
Mm-hmm.
The following day, you met up with Penn Densham, twice Academy Award nominated writer, just brilliant man, loveliest of humans, brilliant storyteller, for breakfast, followed by a lunch with Christopher Lockhart of WME, who is a story editor over there. I joke, but not joking, has the best job in Hollywood.
I agree.
Who got to tell us some stories. We got to do some celebrity watching, debate who the celebrity actually was during lunch. After that, my God, coffee with Allard Cantor of Epicenter, another manager, head of the company, along with his partner Jared. And finally, we had dinner with Lonnie Rogers, a producer. I know you talked about meeting writers as the highlights. Can you tell us a little bit more about those moments that you think will stay with you for a long time?
Yeah, well, for me, meeting Penn was just like, I don't even know how to explain it. You know what I mean? Obviously, grew up on his movies, but he is like his level of storytelling is just out of this world. And he read our scripts,
Yes.
which was also incredible. And he had done research about us before we got there, so he knew things about us both before we even sat down, which was also great. But he gave us like a brief analysis of both of our scripts, and when he talked about my script, the thing that he was able to key on was actually the core of my story, and just to hear him just identify it and pull it out and talk about it, it was just incredible. This is when you really know you're sitting down with a master. You know what I mean? And so that, for me, that was like my mind blow moment. It was really great for me.
Yeah,
I think
he even had some suggestions for you,
Yes.
and really was able to connect with it on such a deep way. It was really moving to watch. One of our final draft people was actually in tears, which
Yes.
I completely got.
Yes.
But yeah, it's
At the table, he was telling us his stories, and I was watching her tear up just through the passion of his storytelling.
Mm-hmm.
And when Khaled and I arrived, we walked into the restaurant and we were just, so starstruck by him. And the first thing he said to us was that he had read our scripts. I almost cried then, and I'm not a crier. I was this close. And then we were kind of, oh goodness, he read our stuff and then took the time to care about us and to speak to us about our scripts. It was kind of overwhelming coming from him. We would have kidnapped him and gone somewhere for the next 10 hours, and just sat at the foot of the master. He gave us sort of a very kind, patient, professorial-like overview of things. And then he asked us, am I boring you? Which just, please stop. We will not talk. You please continue talking. But he gave us wonderful insights. And at the end, he gave us his book, which we're devouring. And it was, the book's about how to sort of really not fail or fail forward or actually maybe even succeed in this business. And his tricks and tips for that were really things we had not heard before, in terms of what we're looking for in the story, our nuggets, our emotional core nuggets of everything we write, really.
Yeah, and when we were leaving, I went to shake his hand, and he embraced me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
He gave us hugs.
Yeah, as an artist. And it was like an artist embrace.
Yeah.
And that was, I got the chills just now. So.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, it was amazing.
It was really watching you guys go through this. We, when we plan these weeks, they plan, I'm allowed to come on board and just give my 2 cents. It always feels like, we have buffers. We have a lot of room, right? We have a lot of space. And it was really fascinating how this week it felt like everything we kept having to run out to the next thing, even though we had all this buffer and all this time, because everybody wanted to talk to you and get to know you. And it felt like because of who you are and how you showed up, everybody was really invested. So we were constantly, poor Amy kept having to give everybody a 10-minute warning and a 5-minute warning. We were like, we'll have time to walk around. No time to walk around.
Right.
And everything, just everybody wanted to maximize their time with you, which speaks to how you showed up. So I would love to hear a little bit about how you prepare for a week like this.
I don't think you can prepare for it. We were not, we thought we were prepared, but it's a race from the get-go. You know, you hit the ground and you go. And it was that kind of momentum that, like, we were so thrilled by it. But each meeting that we had surpassed the previous one, thanks to you and Amy, and, you know, so far exceeded our expectations that I don't think we could have prepared for meeting any of these people, because, you know, the quality of those meetings and the relationship building and the wisdom that was imparted so willingly, like we were welcomed with open arms, really, by every group that we met. And that was so overwhelming that I don't think that there's a way that you could, you know, imagine.
There was something that Greta Heinemann said that is going to now become one of my core beliefs. She said, you don't have anything to prove, you have everything to show. And so I also couldn't figure out what exactly I should do, but what I was doing without knowing it really was sort of that. What I did know was that I'm just going to come here and be me. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? I didn't know, like, you know, should I sit? Because even Greta talked about when she was first in the writer's room, she was subconscious about how she sat and things like that. And that really resonated with me because I was thinking about every detail, you know, how I'm holding my hands, you know.
Right.
Am I smiling? I tend to frown when I listen to people. I'm like, I'm just thinking about all these things. And what I landed on was that I just have to really rest in being myself, and that's what I need to show. And when she said that, I was like, oh, that's it. So if I did have to say a way to prepare is to really just be really comfortable with who you are, and that's how you are as a writer. And that's the thing that you want to show. You just want to show who you are.
Yeah.
And be passionate about what you're doing. Hopefully, as a writer, you're passionate about what you wrote. But it's important to be able to convey that to different audiences and keep in mind who you're speaking to. And also to have some confidence in yourself, because if you don't have that confidence, no one else will have confidence in you. Yep. So make sure you know your story, make sure you know why you wrote it, make sure you know what you want to do with it, and make sure you know where you'd like to go with your career so that when you're presented with all of these wonderful opportunities, you can actually ask the questions that you can go back home with and kind of keep forever. Like Khaled and I met so many wonderful people, but we did get nuggets from each one. And be yourself is excellent advice, because when you first arrive, you're very nervous, and we're still can't believe that we're here. And so you might want to race forward, or you might want to wait for a reaction. But really, it's just everything is a conversation. Mm-hmm. And, you know, we never had to stand up in front of 100 people and, you know, pitch. We were really having conversations with genuine people. And it's a very good way to look at it. So you don't need to be nervous, anyone out there listening. Yeah.
I stayed nervous. So I'm always nervous.
Me too.
You know what I mean? But I can just take the nerves and really, you know,
channel them.
I shake in my feet and my hands under the table.
On the inside.
And then I just try to just be myself. You know what I mean? So as my dad used to say, and I actually heard Will Smith say it, so I don't know who said it first, but my dad said it before you, Will. He would say, you know, just let your voice crack and just speak. And the way Will said it was do it scared. So it's kind of the same thing. So if you're scared, you're nervous, it's going to happen. Good. Everybody feels that way, but just be yourself and just step forward, you know, step forward.
And you could try to take that fear and reframe it in your mind as excitement, you know, and that way you can kind of be a little bit less nervous when you're meeting, you know, people from WME.
And Penn, excuse me, Penn kind of said that as well. He said, you know, like, don't let your fear or like your timidness block you from, you know, an opportunity that you should have. So with almost anyone, you know, I felt like I don't want to.
Impose.
Yeah, I don't want to impose and stuff like that. But
Same. So he told us to not be so polite.
Yeah.
He gave us permission. I'm
Yeah.
Canadian, so of course that's our default position. But we were throughout the week going, I'm not sure that we should say this or we should go approach that person and
Right.
mix it, you know.
There's a tactful way of doing it, respectful way of doing it. You know, don't overdo it, but don't be afraid to do it. So I guess if you can figure that out.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And you guys did a great job. I mean, I got to watch you around these tables and in these conversations where everybody was, yes, they were absolutely generous with their time, but they always asked you, do you have any questions for us? And you guys, with every single person, you guys have leaned in and had those questions. And it didn't feel like, you know, kind of those interview questions, right? What is, you know.
Yeah.
What's your favorite color?
Exactly. It felt like you were really present and really thinking about it. Khaled, I have to commend you. You had a moment yesterday. We met with Allard Cantor, and I'd put Allard on the spot, and he generously stepped into it, and told us a little bit about himself and about his obsession with sports and football and the Giants, and allowed for Khaled to really pivot his pitch in a way that was really effective. And I've seen both of you guys kind of get more comfortable and think on your feet. And think about, Heather, you talked a lot and thought about the characters that you write, the empathy that you have for your characters and the stories that you have to tell. Khaled, I've watched you figure out how to tell a personal story that everybody was really intrigued by in different ways. And I think you kind of learned on your feet and adjusted really well. And I'm happy to report to everybody who's watching, listening, that we got a bunch of script requests. So you're being read. Last night we met with Lonnie Rogers, who was very eager to think about how to start putting, you know, how you would go about putting a project together.
With casting
And specific casting suggestions,
Yes.
which is always so exciting.
Very exciting.
Yeah.
We were very excited.
Even in Fantasyland, is so fun to hear that people are thinking about the work in that way. So we have people that are reading your scripts, that are, you know, responding to the work, responding to you enough to say, we want to read. So tell us, what is next for you? I mean, Khaled, you still have meetings coming up.
Yes. Have some meetings coming up, some big meetings coming up.
Yep, on both the executive front and the rep front. And Heather, you have some things coming up as well.
Yes. I think I still also have 2 generals coming up when I get home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you're still being read. So
Yeah.
we're eager to see what's next. I know the answer, so or if you surprise me with the answer, I'd be really shocked. I know there's a lot of conversation that continues in the space about whether writers should submit to competitions, whether it's a path. And as I work with writers, I always talk about access. I know we're leading up to this. So inevitably the answer is from me expected. But I want to go back to the thoughts that you had earlier on, you know, as the Final Draft Big Break competition, other competitions were opening up. What are your thoughts now on the other side of this, having gained the access about Final Draft, but across the board, are competitions and these opportunities that create access for you, do they deliver? And this is not Final Draft specific, but I do believe in this avenue and in getting your work out there. So I wanted to get your thoughts on where you were starting to submit, what your thoughts were, and where you are now with it, and kind of how it catapulted you forward.
Yeah, I would say, you know, from a guy living in Kansas City, Missouri, you know, in the middle of nowhere, really. Well, let me not say that about Kansas City. We ain't in the middle of nowhere. We're in Kansas City.
Somewhere.
Yeah, we're somewhere. You know, being able to submit to a competition, it was the route that I needed to take because I'm not currently living in LA. I'm not currently building that network, you know, at any level, an entry level or otherwise, that could then help me break in at some point and do this and do that. And so the competition was that en route. And I've heard a similar explanation. And then, you know, Greta kind of talked about it as well, where, you know, either if you're not out here networking and doing that if you're not doing that work for yourself to develop your career, then the competitions and the programs is really, the fastest lane to try to make it happen for yourself. So from that standpoint, I would say, yes, the competitions, absolutely, they still do matter. The programs at different studios and different companies have these programs. Those are extremely important. Otherwise, you really have to be here. You have to be around the people. You have to be building those relationships. So I would say yes, they matter.
Yeah, I concur. And of all of the contests, I think Final Draft has been
Of course.
the number one contest to enter. Yeah. Number one.
Number one.
I've entered contests also, and no one has come even close to this level of.
Same.
Yeah, I mean, no one has come close to this level of professionalism, of how well they treat the writers, of hooking us up with the right people, and I would encourage anyone out there to enter the Final Draft contest, even if you don't think that your script will win. We didn't enter thinking, of course, our script will win the grand prize, but do it. I'm encouraging you to enter Final Draft.
I've placed as a finalist in some others, which I won't name, but nowhere close to this type of experience from an investment standpoint into my career. You know what I mean?
So Final Draft now has 2 walking billboards. We're forever.
I'm getting a T-shirt.
Get a T-shirt. Yeah, we're there for you guys. So it's really true. Like, we have done well in other contests, and nothing. In fact, I don't think they've even followed up with us in some cases. So this contest is really worth doing.
Yeah.
Last plug. Do it.
Well, thank you to both of you. Congratulations to both of you, not only on the wins, but what you made of them. I want to shout out Amy, Nicole, and Shelley at Final Draft, who shepherd this in every way. I've had the privilege of being with the competition since, I believe, 2012, when Shelley initially brought me on, and I just latched on and will never let go because I love what this competition does for writers. I also want to take a second to thank all of the writers, Greta, Pamela, Crosby, Candace, Paul, I'm forgetting, so Katie, anybody that I might be forgetting, all the managers that came to our lunch and met with you guys, the industry people, the executive, of course, Penn Densham, the one and only, Lonnie Rogers, everybody who showed up, everybody who came out to the Idle Hour mixer, Wendy Calhoun for doing that. Clearly, it's a lot of people are involved and give of their time, and I really want to be grateful to them and express that. And Greta Heinemann, my forever ride and die, who always opens this up with us and is so generous with her time and wisdom in my own life. So thank you, Greta. But most of all, I want to congratulate you guys on how you showed up. It's, you do the hard work on the page, you do the writing, and then the person showed up, and you guys showed up in a big way, and you made the most of this, and you made a lot of fans over these last few days. So congrats to you. Please keep us posted. I would love to follow this up in a year or 2 or 5 and hear all about the amazing careers that you've built since this point, but could not be happier for you or prouder of you because you really killed it.
Oh,
thank you.
Thank you so much. That means a lot to us, and we just want to thank you and everyone at Final Draft for being for having our back,
champions, being
and
our
for championing us.
Yes.
Yeah. At a time when we're starting to feel like maybe no one else is going to do it, right?
Yeah, thank you
We're
very
so
much.
appreciative for everything, and we could have not had a better week if we had planned it ourselves.
Well, thank you. Thank you to everybody who watched and listened. Final Draft Big Break 2026 is opening, I believe, March 23rd. They didn't tell me to say that, but I am saying that because I'm a believer, which is why I'm here all these years later. Thank you to everybody who took the time to listen to this, and to you guys for doing the hard work.
Thank you.
Thank you.